Carmelo Anthony ready to move. He says he will accept a deal to Cleveland or to play with his friend Chris Paul and then be reunited somehow with Mike D'Antoni. I thought he made sure that D'Antoni got fired in New York. How the heck is he going to go play with him in Houston? Whatever. Steve Popper joins us from the Bergen Record. He posted a story on NorthJersey.com this morning about Carmelo Anthony's possible exit. He joins us here on Big Board Sports this morning. Steve, Rodger Weiland, Chris Honorado on 104.5 at Team ESPN Radio in Albany. How are you today?
Hey guys, it's just another day, just another holiday, little break here.
I was going to say, there's no break.
I do think the one thing that we're talking here is that, it's still possible is the key word, that, they're very far from having something done is what I'm hearing, that, Carmelo is opening himself up to the possibility, which is, sort of, I guess, not totally unexpected, that he had really dug his heels in against Phil, and when Phil's gone, and now it's Steve Mills, who has a little bit of a relationship with him, maybe can kind of talk to him about the future and what it means, and things that Phil could have done or maybe could have done in a better way that do make sense for Carmelo. But it's still a tough situation. It's tough to work a trade with a guy with this kind of salary, who has the final approval and the family situation and everything. It's still a tough deal to kind of figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of layers. And right now, I mean, who's making these decisions in New York? I mean, they're in between. Is who's going to be the new president? Is going to be Steve Mills? Are they going to bring in David Griffin, which would make a lot of sense to me? I mean, can Steve Mills make this decision right now, along with Dolan, and get this done or not?
Well, I think that's the exact trajectory it's on right now. Is that it's Steve and well, I hear that Dolan will back off again, as he did for Phil. I'm assuming that at this stage of something this major, he would be involved and have to sign off on. But I think like I said, beyond getting it to Dolan's desk, I just think there's a lot of layers to this that are going to be tough to navigate. There were reports that the Knicks had already not been interested in a deal centered around Ryan Anderson, and without that, it's very tough to see how they could make it work in Houston. I think, as you mentioned, the D'Antoni thing is awkward at best. But I don't think Carmelo's problem was so much with D'Antoni. D'Antoni's a pretty amiable guy, and I don't think that they had an issue as much as it was more who he was being asked to defer to, not that he was being asked to defer. It was, Carmelo is a prideful guy, was what he is, a Hall of Fame bound player. And, after 2 weeks of insanity, people were asking, how he was going to change his game to fit Jeremy Lin. And in Mike's system, he does want the ball in the hands of the point guard. So it was, it's a big difference between saying your buddy Chris Paul is going to be orchestrating things, or, Jeremy Lin, who just got called up from the D League or G League or whatever they want to call it right now. It's a big difference, I think. So I think that they could make it work with that, and especially with the players who were there.
Steve Popper of the great Bergen Record. It's a newspaper and a sports section I had taken away from me by many a teacher at Glen Rock High School growing up in northern Jersey because I wasn't paying attention in class. Steve, look, the best we can do now is play the if game. And I like to play the if game as much as anybody. If Melo isn't part of the plan for next season, do the Knicks, would they also then try to trade a guy like Courtney Lee to really free up cap space and just simply play a bystander in this summer's free agency?
I think that is a definite possibility. I don't think they're looking to compete this year. I don't think they can compete. They're so far away from it. And when we talk about moving Carmelo, you still are talking about moving their leading scorer, their best player, a guy who, is fading towards the end of his career, but is still their best player right now. Porzingis will be someday, but he's not yet. So I think you're talking about taking a quick downhill dive here to hope that the future gets better. Ideally, the best thing for them to do would be, you hear Cleveland and Houston as the possibilities, and even Cleveland to make it work. You almost need Kevin Love in it. If somehow you could coax Boston, if they don't get Hayward into a deal, a three-way deal where they get Love and so the Knicks can get some of those young assets from Boston, that would make sense from the Knicks standpoint. And the Courtney Lee thing, he is a guy who has some value. I think if you look up and down the roster, the probably, the one guy who has real value, obviously, is Porzingis, which, as crazy as it was that Phil, the way he did it, it's not unheard of to consider moving him at the draft. If you could take your one piece you have and get it for three pieces, you're so far from contention now. It's not out of the question. But I think Courtney Lee, to a lesser extent, falls in that. A very, very manageable contract, a 3-and-D guy, a good, solid guy that a lot of people around the league like. And that's really all they have that would attract anyone right now.
We're talking with Steve Popper, the Bergen Record. NBA very busy with everything going on with the free agency, and Gordon Hayward being wined and dined in Boston. What is the likelihood of him ending up as a member of the Boston Celtics?
I really can't guess, because those are three attractive things to him. Boston obviously has his college coach who everybody loves, and a lot of talent, and that's a team where you can say, I'm going to go to the East. I'm going to be an all-star again. I'm going to be have a very good chance to make it to the finals. Utah obviously was a great situation. They kind of were a team on the rise, and I think, a team that a lot of people have a lot of faith in, other than they're in a conference with, the Warriors, and you're going to have a real hard path to get past them. And then there's Miami with, no state tax, and Pat Riley, and, Spoelstra, and another team on the rise. I think those are three tough choices. I couldn't even begin to put myself in his head what they're going to decide, him and his family.
Steve, were there any surprises over the weekend with players and where they ended up or stayed put?
Well, I think the Paul George thing caught everybody by surprise. The way Oklahoma City jumped in, what the package, the return was for him. I think there's been, every year at this time there's a little shock at the numbers when you start to sit there and do the math in your head and you're like, is Steph Curry really making $40 million a year? And then you start looking at some of the lesser players, is this guy really making $15 million a year? Is Kyle Lowry really making $33 million a year? The numbers are crazy, but it's just, the cost of what it is now. And I think everybody's going to be walking into, this luxury tax that's going to become a way of life. And, the NBA is obviously a very lucrative business right now, but you're going to be adding, a couple of million, 100 million possibly in luxury tax, in the Warriors case, per year. It's kind of crazy what the cost of doing business is now.
Hey, one more for me, Steve, and that is on the Knicks first-round pick. Frank Ntilikina remains out with a bruised right knee, won't play in the team's summer league opener, did not on Saturday against Dallas. What are you still? Where do you stand on that pick now? With obviously Phil Jackson out of the picture, he was very high on this young man for a lot of reasons, including the triangle offense and the ability to run the team and make good decisions from a point guard standpoint, and a good defender. Now that Phil is out, I wonder what the Knicks feel about that pick with the 8th overall in the first round.
Well, I think that just shows you really how this escalated so quickly with Dolan stepping in finally. This was Phil's pick. I'll say this. Scouts I've talked to are high on the kid. They think he has potential. They think he's years away. But almost every scout I talked to also said, I'd take Dennis Smith over him, that this guy has a chance to be a really special player. So what you've got is a long, rangy point guard with pretty good skills, but a long way off. But the Knicks are a long way off too. So I guess if they take their time, I think getting a good veteran point guard in here this year would be a nice learning experience for him. Someone that can help kind of navigate the path for him for a year or two. That would probably be ideal. But it's one more that Phil's going to have on his reputation if it goes wrong.
Well, my question is, can he score? I know he can run the team, and I know he can make good decisions, high basketball IQ. What about from a scoring standpoint?
He's had some games in some of the international competition, more in the when he plays with the younger guys, in sort of these, a World Cup, Olympic type things. He's had, I think there was 134-point game I saw. So I think he can. That's not what he was drafted for, but I think he has the potential there. But again, you're talking about a guy in Dennis Smith who, people bring up the name Russell Westbrook with him, that explosive inside, outside, scoring ability. And Malik Monk too, a great shooter, probably the best shooter in the draft. These are guys you passed on, so it's gonna be something he's gonna have to measure up to. New York can be a little unforgiving about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. This is not going to be overnight. I mean, this is going to be a project, but as you said, the Knicks are nowhere near being really good anyway. So might as well sit back and see this young man and if he can develop. Steve Popper, Bergen Record. Appreciate you coming on, holiday weekend and all. Thanks for a few minutes on the NBA.
Anytime, guys.
Thanks, Steve.